Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers did not get swept by the Nationals. In fact, they knocked Patrick Corbin out of the game in the first inning. We'll get into that. We'll get into Andrew Heaney. We'll follow up on some Gavin Lux defense stuff and get into one contender being off the board for a Juan Soto trade. That's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is Locked On Dodgers, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Subscribe in all those places and make it easy on yourself, and you'll never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listener watching, I'm Vince Samperio. That's my co-host, Jeff Snider. And we are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent some time covering the Dodgers in a variety of ways and continue to cover the Dodgers in a variety of ways, with one of those ways being this podcast, Locked On Dodgers, where we talk about the Dodgers every Monday through Friday. So let's do what we do best and talk about the Dodgers. Jeff, the Dodgers did not get swept by the Nationals. They salvaged the series, and we talked about the best way to lose the series, and winning the last one is usually the best way because you have a good feeling on your way out at the very least. This one was a good feeling kind of from the first inning because the Dodgers knocked out Patrick Corbin, scoring 6 runs on 7 hits. One of those hits aided by Nationals defense. But either way, it was fun from the beginning. All those runs scored without the benefit of a home run. And it was just a good way to get started on an early Wednesday day game.
Yeah, and it also all happened with 2 outs. That was kind of big. You had uh, Mookie Betts on third base with 1 out after Trey Turner had moved him over, and then Freddie Freeman grounded out on the first pitch, unable to get Mookie in. He thought, "Oh man, wasted opportunity." And then, boom, 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 boom. Justin Turner RBI hit to get the ball rolling. He ended up with a big double from Hanser Alberto, the big outfield defense aided double by Gavin Lux that you mentioned. Austin Barnes got in on the party, had an RBI single. Just a really, really good two out inning. Mookie Betts was standing on third with 2 outs, and he ended up batting again that inning, and that's pretty impressive. And Patrick Corbin isn't a good pitcher, but he used to be, and at least one person on Twitter thought he had the Dodgers number and was going to sit them down. I won't mention any names, but it was. I think he listens to this show anyway. But yeah, it was a really, really good way to come out. They talk about angry wins, when you're upset about how the previous game had gone. I think this was really a statement saying, we're still the Dodgers, you're still the Nationals. Let's get this series over with so we can go focus on more important things.
Yeah, and it was a good boost for Andrew Heaney, who made his return to the mound. Got out of the first inning unscathed, and then saw the Dodgers drop 6. The only question you had was if it was too long of a wait for him in between innings, but not really. Andrew Heaney was pretty good, efficient enough. He had a pitch count of around 75 pitches, so obviously didn't go too deep into the game, but did what he's done all season in only a very short capacity, which is throw innings and not allow runs, and that's what he continued to do. So it's a good sign for the Dodgers to see that. They've talked about maybe keeping him on a pitch count throughout the rest of the time. That would be an interesting way to go about it, especially with the way the bullpen set up, and even with the full staff that they had this last time around, they still almost ran out of pitching that one of the games, or kind of did with throwing Clevenger in a spot that they maybe wouldn't have normally thrown him. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle him. There's also a week until the trade deadline, or less than a week now as you're listening to this, until the trade deadline. They could fix it that way and get another starter, maybe, push Heaney, Vesia, and obviously Clevenger and David Price. None of those guys are dominant lefties out of the pen. Ferguson could be that guy, but he hasn't really been able to throw back-to-back days. I would imagine they don't want Heaney to throw back-to-back days, but if they do go out and get pitching, or if Dustin May and Walker Buehler both come back at some point, you could see Heaney working in as reliever as well.
Yeah, right now, Heaney said after the game, his goal is to start more than 2 starts in a row. He hasn't done that yet this year, and I'm in favor of a pitch count at least until he's done that. Let him get through 3 or 4 starts, and then, and you can be on a pitch count and still go 6 innings because the pitch count doesn't stay at 70 every time. The pitch count gets up to 95 or whatever. I'm fine if Andrew Heaney never tops 100 pitches this year because I think he could give you six good innings. And Oral Hershiser actually made a good point during Wednesday's game about Tuesday's game and the pitching situation and how some of it, people were like, well, how come Evan Phillips was unavailable? He didn't pitch yesterday. But knowing that Heaney was only going to give you 4 or 5 innings, best case scenario today, it was Dave Roberts had to not just look at the previous workload, but also look at kind of a guaranteed bullpen workload today. And Evan Phillips ended up not being needed because the offense showed up. But it was very likely last night that Evan Phillips and Caleb Ferguson were going to be needed today. And, the offense, kudos to the offense for letting it be a Jake Reed, David Price kind of game instead. But yeah, it's so easy to criticize on social media. And I think it just reinforced to me, Dave Roberts, even though I do believe that when he does make mistakes, it usually does have to do with managing the bullpen and, specifically most often using starters instead of relievers in relief. But even on bullpen management, I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for.
And it's just a matter of, the situation the Dodgers are in and the fact, July 27th is still fairly early. Last year, July 27th, coming out of the break, they had those games with the Giants and they were right there with the Giants. This year, they have a little bit more cushion. So they can, not necessarily concede a game, maybe like the one on Tuesday, but play it a little bit differently, try to get away with some stuff and hope that the offense can pick you up and get you out of it, which is what the offense didn't do. The offense has a normal night on Tuesday. There's not even a question that game's an easy win. Unfortunately, didn't go that way. And then, like I said, everything else that happened, one of those things being Gavin Lux's defensive play, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Jeff did some research there, but it's just a matter of, Dave Roberts. I think there's times, he makes decisions that are questionable. Most of the time, the ones that are the most brought up or the one that angers the most people are usually later rectified by some kind of injury or some kind of issue of why so-and-so didn't do this or why so-and-so didn't do that. This one, kind of rectified in that sense. Last night, we heard that a bunch of guys were down. And if you question, why they're down, it's just a matter of, if yesterday was a game where if the offense, you were, up, maybe Clevenger shouldn't have got the 8th, but realistically, he pitched good enough to get you to the 9th. It didn't happen. The offense didn't pick you up, and then, he left them in the 9th. I don't think Clevenger would have stayed in if the Dodgers had tied the game or obviously not if they had taken the lead. So it happens sometimes, but the Dodgers responded in a big way. Offense said, we'll take care of this game today. Andrew Heaney and the bullpen did the rest, and now they head into Colorado with a somewhat rested bullpen, at least for high leverage guys.
Yeah, and the Padres and Giants both had the decency to lose, and so the Dodgers picked up that game. We talked yesterday about how the Dodgers had lost a game in the standings for the first time since July 3rd. Well, they got that back. So we are now 25 days past then, and basically the Padres are as far as they've ever been from first place this season, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, very happy. Let's talk about the Gavin Lux stuff after we talk about Sports Card Investor app, because the Sports Card Investor app is reimagining the world of sports cards, and it's the hobby's most powerful resource. You can quickly check the value of your favorite cards, find great deals, and profit from the hobby you love. And you can do it all from the ease of an app, a free app, I might add, free on Google Play and Apple App Stores. You can browse over 630,000 cards from every sport, probably more at this point because they add hundreds every week. And you can check the latest values of your favorite cards with 7-day or 30-day charts. You can find the best prices and buy directly through the app with their eBay deals feature. So if you're a casual card collector, a new card collector, or want to check out some cards that your dad gave you back in the day, you can look on the Sports Card Investor app and see what you got available for free in the Google Play and Apple App Stores, or you can go to sportscardinvestor.com/locked on. MLB trade deadline. Thank you for making us Locked On Dodgers first listen of the day every day. And a reminder that the MLB trade deadline is August 2nd, and Locked On MLB has all the breakdowns. Locked On Dodgers, that's us, will have rapid reactions to any move made. So subscribe now to your favorite Locked On MLB team, which is us, Locked On Dodgers, on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, so you get notified when each episode premieres. All right, Jeff. So, as I alluded to, we talked about Gavin Lux and the defensive miscues he's made this year and how it always seems to lead to runs or a bigger inning or, basically reminding us that when Gavin Lux makes errors, we remember it more because of that reason. You did the research and tell us, are we right, or is it just a matter of it happened a few times and we remember it more often?
Yeah, I think it is somewhat exception. And one disclaimer here: there's no database for plays we think he should have made. We know errors, and interestingly, Gavin Lux has 6 errors this year. All 6 of them are at second base. He hasn't made an error in left field. I think everybody would agree he has been better defensively at second base than he has been in left field. It's just so I don't have any way of looking up, unless I specifically remember a game, looking up, oh, there was a play that Gavin Lux took a bad route and he didn't get to a ball he should have, because that's not an error. But if we're looking at just the 6 errors that he has made, 3 of them have led to runs. 3 of them were totally inconsequential, made the pitcher throw a couple extra pitches, nothing else. The other 3, you had the game against the Diamondbacks when the D-backs ended up scoring 3 runs in the inning, but only the first one was unearned. Actually, only the last one was unearned. Dalton Varsho reached base on a Gavin Lux error, and that error let 2 runs score. And so we remember that. And then Varsho ended up scoring later. And so our minds tell us, man, that whole inning is on Gavin Lux. But the batter after Varsho hit a base hit. And so those 2 runs that scored on the Varsho on the Lux error were going to score anyway. It was only Varsho scoring that was unearned because he had reached on an error. And then you had the game that Michael Grove was pitching, and Lux made that error, and then Grove kind of imploded, ended up giving up 4 runs that inning after the inning should have been over. So that led to 4 unearned runs, and that was against the Pirates. And that one was extra frustrating because it contributed to a loss to the Pirates, who aren't good. And then there was the one on Tuesday night that directly led to the go-ahead run. That was actually the first one. Yeah, that was the first one that actually cost the Dodgers the game, quote unquote, that let the go-ahead run score. Or that, I guess the one against the Pirates, technically that was the go-ahead run, but then the Pirates scored more runs than the Dodgers didn't anyway. And so really, it's been a couple big ones that either allowed a lot of runs to score or gave the perception of allowing a lot of runs to score. But overall, it's 6 errors that led to a total of 7 unearned runs, and 4 of those came in 1 inning. So it's not as bad as we think. I do think the misplays or the plays we think maybe he should have made come into play too. And like I said, there's no way to look those up. But yeah, overall, Gavin Lux has actually been really good defensively. He's 6 errors is not terrible. And he's if you look at defensive WAR, Lux is like 4th or 5th on the team. Max Muncy actually is the team leader in defensive WAR, which I don't think many people give him credit for. But anyway, that's my update on Gavin Lux and his defense.
There you go. So not as bad, but it definitely has left a bad taste in their mouth a couple times. Moving on, sticking with the defensive side, Mookie Betts came in later into the game and played second base. Joe Davis, I don't know if he had an inside scoop, misspoke, whatever it was, but he alluded to the fact that Mookie is maybe going to play second base or start at second base in this series against the Rockies. We were trying to figure out when and or what the reason would be for him to do that. It would obviously be to get an extra bat in there. But interesting, because Gavin Lux is the normal second baseman, and you wouldn't want him playing the outfield in Coors realistically. So it's either a game where he's going to sit, or maybe a game where they give somebody a day off at shortstop that doesn't normally get a day off, and use Gavin Lux over there.
Yeah. Trey Turner has not yet had a day off. He did get to sit the last couple innings of this game on Wednesday. He's done that, I don't know, a handful of times this year. Freddie Freeman's had maybe 2 handfuls of games where he's sat for a couple innings at the end of the game. But in the end, it's Yeah, it might just be to give Gavin Lux a day off. It might just be to keep Mookie's skills fresh at second base, but it is hard to figure out.
Yeah, and it's getting beyond that point and getting to another topic that we want to talk about with Freddie and Trey Turner, and even Mookie Betts to a certain extent is maybe starting to get some of these guys days off as the division lead has grown, and all but assured it would take a collapse of epic proportions to knock them out of the NL West lead. It's we don't know how hard the Dodgers are going to play for the overall number one seed. They're definitely going to play hard enough for the overall top two seed in the National League, which they're pretty comfortably in the lead for as well, just because the NL Central is not that good. But it's a matter of conversation here of should they start resting these guys here and there once a week, maybe so. Should they, will that come with if they trade for somebody else and they have, the wherewithal to rest these guys, or does a guy like Miguel Vargas come up and they want to get him some type of regular at bats, and that's where guys sit. It's a matter of does Max Muncy sit a little bit more than he did before, or maybe play first base, and that unlocks the Max Muncy of old if he just plays first base for a little bit, but. Yeah, I mean, that's where the conversation is at, and I would like to hear what you think.
Yeah, I definitely think that as the season goes on, they are going to want to give a lot of guys some days off. I don't think you want to go into the postseason with Trey Turner having played all 162 games plus the All-Star game. I don't think he needs a ton of rest. I don't think Freeman needs a ton of rest. I think they both take a lot of pride in playing a lot. And whether that's, even if they start every game, taking every opportunity to get them off their feet and really, this game was only a 5-run game when they took those guys out, 5 or 6 runs. And so it's not like it was a huge blowout, but taking those opportunities. Okay, we're up by 4 runs with 4 innings left. Let's get Freddie out of the game for now. That's one of the benefits of having a big lead is you can manage workload and all of that stuff that the Dodgers never had the opportunity to do last year. And we saw that in the postseason. The Dodgers were worn out. I think the Braves won that series because because it was a battle of attrition, and the Dodgers were just worn out from having to fight tooth and nail to try to beat the Giants in the regular season.
Yeah, and luckily they're not going to have to do that, at least not for the division. More than likely, they do play the Padres a lot, so in theory, there's still a way that it can become close. But as Jeff talked about before, it would take a lot. But for me, it's more like, how hard are they going for this one overall seed? They're now tied with the Yankees, or virtually tied with the Yankees. They technically have the higher, or not technically, they have the higher winning percentage, but just one less loss and one less win than the Yankees. So they've played a equal amount of games in terms of the number. There's no odd games right now, but yeah, I mean, it's a matter of how hard they're going to play for that one seed. The Yankees just traded for Andrew Benintendi. We'll talk about that in the next segment because that knocks somebody out of the Juan Soto race realistically. But it's, does home field advantage matter that much to them? Is a matter of getting the guys rest and getting into the postseason healthy. Baseball is a lot different sport than some of these other sports. In football, usually it's the last week of the season where guys will get some rest if the team already has their seed locked up or they're not playing for anything. Basketball, there's load management throughout the season and even bigger in some big matchups and games, especially down the stretch if a team's already locked it in. But baseball, realistically, you don't really need load management too much unless you got a guy, Justin Turner would be that guy because he seems to, pull a hamstring every year. And he did so last year. Last year in the playoffs, right? So I think they'll get guys here and there, but like you said, nothing too much. If anything, a day off every week or a day off every 2 weeks is probably more than enough than they need, especially for a guy like Freeman and Turner. Those guys, they're in top physical peak shape, and so is Mookie Betts.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, we're going to talk about that Yankee trade and kind of what it means for the landscape of the trade season for everybody else. But first, no, we don't have anything to talk about. We're going to get right into this conversation and talk about it. Thank you real quick for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. And yeah, Jeff, let's talk about it. The Yankees traded for Andrew Benintendi, traded 3 prospects. Number one, it doesn't affect the Dodgers too much unless they face the Yankees in the World Series. But two, it does affect the Dodgers in a slight sense where it probably knocks the Yankees out of the running for Juan Soto. They already have Stanton and Judge, and even Stanton being hurt, but they have Stanton and Judge and Benintendi and Hicks, and they have enough guys that can play DH as well and outfield. So it probably takes them out of the running. And maybe, the first salvo, we've been waiting for the first kind of pin to drop in this trade season. Maybe this is the one that sparks some stuff, because even not only have we not really had any trades with less than a week to go, but we haven't really had the big rumors that we're usually used to at this point in time.
Yeah, it seems like the potential availability of Juan Soto has kind of I don't know, put a freeze on everything else. And so this maybe will unlock that freeze a little bit. Like you said, it does take out one suitor for Soto. In a weird way, though, it also might make things harder for the Dodgers to get Luis Castillo, because the Yankees now can focus their efforts on starting pitching. And they didn't have to give up major prospect capital, the 3 prospects, but nothing earth-shattering for Benintendi, which means they still have the juice to get Luis Castillo if they want. And since they don't have to think about Soto anymore, it might make things harder for the Dodgers getting Luis Castillo, if that is in the Dodgers' plans, which I assume they're at least interested in Castillo. And yeah, it's so hard to know without knowing how interested the Dodgers actually are in Soto, and how committed they are. I don't know if you saw Dylan Hernandez's article tonight about the Dodgers need to get Juan Soto and not repeat the mistake that the Angels made with Mike Trout. Any guesses what mistake that might be, Vince?
No.
Failing to build a team around Mike Trout. So basically, Dylan's point is the Dodgers are in a competition window right now, and they need to do everything they can to win the World Series right now, instead of repeating the mistake of not building a team around Mike Trout. I didn't have the heart to tell Dylan that the Dodgers have gone to the postseason 9 straight years and gone to the World Series 3 times and gone to the NLCS 850 times in those 9 years. And so they have already not repeated the mistake that the Angels made with Mike Trout. But you know what? It gave Dylan something to complain about. So good for him. But yeah, I think you tweeted something yesterday, and it was kind of the same feeling I was having, which was that, I wasn't totally on board with giving up what it takes to get Juan Soto, but every time I think of Juan Soto in a Dodger uniform, I'm like, yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, last week I was like, okay, one of Cartaya Miller, one of Pajes Vargas, and I still feel that way to a certain extent. Obviously, they can get it done, but it's also a matter of, if the Dodgers just do it and tomorrow I wake up and Juan Soto's a Dodger, there's not going to be any regret I'm going to be just happy. There's not going to be anything like, oh man, we gave up too much, unless they gave up like literally the top 10 prospects. And even then, it's not going to affect the Dodgers this year. It's not going to affect the Dodgers next year, and probably won't even affect the Dodgers for, 2 or 3 more years, because, realistically, none of those prospects were expected to have a huge impact in the next couple of years. Pepio would be that one if he's ended up being in a deal. Vargas as well. He's the only one kind of expected to come up this year. But it's a matter of, the Dodgers we've seen them. We've seen them trade 15 to 20 prospects in the last 5 years. They've continued to make the playoffs. They've continued to put guys in the top 100 prospects. They've continued to develop guys in their farm system from, lower tier rounds, or the bottom of every round, into productive guys, or at least productive enough to trade for the big name guys like Trey Turner and Mookie Betts, and give them the reasoning to sign Freddie Freeman. So yeah, it's one of those. It's still the same boat where if they don't trade for him, I'm okay. If they do trade for him, I'd be okay. But it's also a matter of, now you're seeing the Cardinals and the Padres as the 2 other teams, and realistically, I don't think that would put any of them above the Dodgers on paper. But it would make them more formidable, and it would be 2 potential teams they would play in the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and there's a couple ways of looking at this. In one way, I mean, the counter argument to what Dylan was saying is that the Dodgers don't follow the traditional competition window pattern because they develop really well. And so, I mean, you look at what they've done: Clayton Kershaw, Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, Walker Buehler, Will Smith, Gavin Lux. These guys all came up through the Dodger system. And then they got guys like Justin Turner and Chris Taylor and Max Muncy, who were taking off other people's scrap heaps. And then they used some of their prospect capital and traded Alex Verdugo and Jeter Downs to get Mookie Betts. And they traded Josiah Gray and Keibert Ruiz to get Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. They've done a really good job in all of these ways. And so there's always a point where you'd have to say, okay, that is too much mortgaging of the future to be worth getting one person. I don't know what that point is. And if you look at the Dodgers minor league system, they almost have to make a trade because they have if you look at the Dodgers prospect list, they probably have 25 guys in the minor leagues right now who are going to end up playing in the big leagues. And they're not going to have room for all those guys, and so they have to trade some of these guys. They have guys, Cartaya has to be added to the 40-man roster after this year. They have several guys like that who have to go on the 40-man roster, which means they're going to need to make some trades. And some guys who are currently on the 40-man roster are going to have to go. Some guys who are eligible for Rule 5 after this season are going to have to go. The Dodgers almost have to make some trades in the next week just for roster management. And while you're doing that, you know what? Might as well add Luis Castillo and Juan Soto. While I had to trade these guys, I might as well get the best pitcher and the best hitter available.
Yeah, why not? Let's go out and
Is that selfish of me, Vince?
No, Jeff. I think we're all entitled to feel that way.
It's selfish.
Sometimes you have to be a little selfish.
I'm selfish, but I'm right. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, even unfortunately, he's on the network with Trevor Bauer, but there's a guy that came up on my TikTok the other day who does stuff, and he hits off the fastballs off the machine in 99 miles an hour, and then people are like, "Oh, you're just a machine hitter." So he wanted to face an actual pitcher, and he faced a pitcher from the Dodgers organization, Ronan Kopp, who I've heard the name but didn't know much about. That guy's throwing 99 from the left side with the hammer breaking ball, and most people have never even heard of him or never even seen him pitch. And he's 19 years old, throwing 100 from the left side with the hammer curveball. So there's a lot of talent in this Dodgers organization that even we don't know about. That our buddy Justin from last week, the future Dodgers, he would know more about. But there's just so much here, and like you said, there's a point to where it does become a surplus because you can't hold all these guys anymore. Just because the Dodgers, realistically, they're not going to call up 5 to 10 guys a year that are going to be regulars. They might call up 5 to 10 guys to do here and there, like a Pepio, a few starts here and there, or guys in the past. Last year we saw a bunch of guys come up and get some at bats here and there, but they don't have the room to be calling up multiple guys at a time for roles that are feature roles. So eventually they do have to, the chickens do come to roost. I think that's the saying, and they do have to make some moves. And now it's the time, because realistically, what are you going to do with them after this offseason? It's not going to help you. If you're going to have to get rid of them this offseason, might as well get rid of them now and get yourself geared up for this postseason run.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy that comes to mind is Gavin Stone, who MLB.com has him listed as the Dodgers number 18 prospect. People are talking about he might be the best pitcher in the minor leagues this year. He has taken so many leaps forward. It's their player development is so good. And I really do think it's a sustainable model of draft these guys, turn them into really good prospects, and then trade them if you have to. Trade some of them, bring some of them up. Bobby Miller or Ryan Pepio. I don't think there's going to be room for both of those guys in the rotation. So you pick one, you have one highlight a trade for Luis Castillo, and the other one you pencil into the rotation next year, or whatever it is. And the Dodgers in the last decade or so, basically since Andrew Friedman was hired, have been really, really, really good at balancing all of that, drafting and developing and trading and signing, and every way that you can build a baseball team. The Dodgers have been really good at it. And I'm mostly just excited for the next week to see what other ways they come up with to be good at building a baseball team.
And you even think about the last two drafts, one of them pitcher heavy, one of them position player heavy, shortstop heavy, like you mentioned, but shortstops can pretty much play anywhere on the diamond. So, of those 40 names or whatever from the last 2 years, we might not know them now. We've heard them in the episodes we've done with Justin, but those are guys that are probably going to be top 100 prospects here in the next 2-3 years. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's how it goes. All right, Jeff. 4 games start in Colorado. I wish we could just fast forward this weekend, take a 2-2 record, and get by it. But unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen.
They're going to make them play the stupid games.
Yeah.
But this is the last trip to Colorado this week, right? This year, right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, third road trip. I think that's it. So no more games in Colorado after this weekend. Just get through it alive and with the ERAs relatively intact and move on.
And then they go play the Giants again, and then they have the Padres at home. So
then we don't got to go to Colorado till the postseason.
Oh, man. All right. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He's bringing passion and a unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. For us, you can follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-LOCK. That's 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, text my device by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.